Boopity boop. This E3 coverage is brought to you by Ting, mobile that makes sense.
Hey guys, Nick and Tara here for Rev3 Games. Again, it is day 1 or day 0, depending on who you ask, of E3 2014, and we just got to watch EA's press conference. Typically, they reserve about half of the hour-long press conference for sports.
Yep, they did that this year. They padded it out in an interesting way, too, where it was like game you'd care about, and then a sports game, and then a game you'd care about, and then The Sims, and they just like back and forth between casual stuff and hardcore stuff for the duration of the whole hour.
Yeah, so they started off with Star Wars Battlefront, which is a game that we keep hearing about. I feel like it's been years and years since we started hearing about
And there's still nothing really to show yet, just sort of environments and some of the modeling that they're doing, a lot of behind-the-scenesy stuff.
Yeah, and then Dragon Age Inquisition, they showed some of the same trailers that we saw in the Microsoft press conference.
But with a cello player.
But with a live cello player, which was incredible. They also showed some gameplay, which makes it look really awesome.
Yeah.
And then they also showed some behind-the-scenes stuff from BioWare. So they basically revealed that there is a new Mass Effect game in the works.
Right.
And then they also talked about this new IP that they're building that they didn't give us any information on, not even a name.
Yeah, the whole thing was so unclear. I couldn't tell if they were talking about re-releasing the Mass Effect games or talking about Mass Effect 4. And right at the point where I thought they were actually going to tell us, they went and started talking about The Sims 4. Like, woman ran out on stage and was screaming.
They actually devoted a lot of time to The Sims 4.
And they didn't talk about the most interesting part of The Sims 4, which you've seen in some trailers. The house building stuff this time around is actually legitimately neat. Yeah. And you have a lot of freedom, and they showed none of that. So.
Well, they were talking about The Sims themselves and how you can give them certain personality traits now. That you can make them ambitious or hot-headed or romantic.
They sort of told us the story of a Sim named Gladys who drives her neighbor insane by making fun of his poetry, and then he laughs himself to death. It was like an Edgar Allan Poe story, almost. It was really strange.
It was beautiful. And then they have this, they had Criterion come on stage and talk about this new IP that they're building, which again, we didn't get a name for.
Right, nameless.
Criterion is known for the Burnout series. Almost all of their games have involved driving and cars. They're totally eschewing that now in favor of other kinds of exercises or fitness.
Vehicles. I would describe it as a Criterion game about all of the dumbest vehicles on Earth, but from the first-person perspective. Apparently it's an action sports game, and apparently it's built for VR in some way. Like, they're thinking about VR a lot. It's hard to imagine playing any of that stuff without getting traumatically motion sick. Yeah. But I love Criterion to death, and I trust them to do something interesting with it.
So no cars in that game. It's just going to be like extreme sports, I guess. ATVs, helicopters, boats, wingsuits. A lot of fun stuff like that. So that looks really cool. Then they announced Dawngate, which I hadn't heard of before. This is apparently a free-to-play MOBA, and they described it as it's supposed to sort of look and feel familiar, but it's got some new gameplay elements in there, a lot of flexible gameplay that sort of changes up the typical MOBA.
Right, they talked a lot about the idea of building a game for MOBA players with them in mind and getting feedback on them, which is probably why they wound up with a game that looks a lot like Dota and League of Legends. But what are you going to do?
Well, there it is. And then Mirror's Edge 2, which is the game that I was most excited to see, did not disappoint.
No, it looked really neat. I think they showed a lot of interesting stuff with like momentum. Like, normally in the first game when you would run up to a pipe, things would slow down a bit while you climbed it. No such slowness here.
Yeah, it's very minimalistic, very elegant, just like the first game. It does look incredibly similar, but you know, next gen.
Right, but the combat stuff was interesting,
The combat is cool. They didn't show, they talked a little bit about the combat, but they didn't have any guns or anything in there. It was all about how, because they were talking about how she has new moves and a broader move set, and you're going to be able to incorporate a lot of those moves into the combat, so it's going to feel very tight and controlled.
It's easy to imagine how that could feel good too, of chaining enemies together while disarming them and running off walls and never actually engage with them. They didn't say no guns. I was waiting for them to say no guns. They never actually said that out loud, but everything they showed made it look like you could possibly, I'm hoping, play through it without shooting anyone, which it would be a victory as far as I'm concerned.
And the last game they showed was Battlefield Hardline, which got leaked a couple weeks ago. It's basically like a Battlefield game, but more cops and robbers style. And it's apparently supposed to have a huge component of team play. So they showed a 32-player heist.
Right, looked heavily scripted to me. Lots of like,
so many explosions.
Jumping out of a helicopter, and then the helicopter lands on a car, and then a guy lands on a bike and speeds off. And I'm like, okay, that'll happen 1 in every 100 matches. But it was still, it still excited me, even though it was extremely silly.
It was like a Michael Bay movie, basically.
Right. Yeah.
And then they sort of had this grand announcement at the end that the beta for that game is going to be launching today on Battlefield.com. You can sign up. It's PC or PS4. I tried loading the website and it was not working, so they must be flooded right now.
Maybe by the time you see this, it'll be better. Probably not. But I guess that's a recurring theme we've seen in all the press conferences so far. Is by the way, this is available now. They did it with the Dead Rising 3 DLC. They did it with Hardline. I'm hoping they keep doing it because that's one of my favorite gimmicks. It's silly, but it's something about that. It's like, oh, and you can get it today. I still fall for that every time.
I like it though. I'm impatient though, so that's just how I work. So that was all of the EA press conference. A lot of explosions in that hour-long press conference. I really liked the announcement of Mirror's Edge 2. There wasn't anything else that super excited me.
For me, it's the Criterion game, and it was once again one of those moments where I was like, oh my god, maybe we're about to get to see a gameplay trailer, and right when that happened, it was FIFA, and I was like, all right, okay, fine, I guess I'm never gonna get what I want out of these press conferences entirely. But
there is more time in the day. We've got 2 more press conferences today, followed by Nintendo tomorrow. Like I said, we are going to be doing all kinds of show floor coverage this week, as well as coverage of all of the press conferences. So if you want news about E3, you know where to find it.
You're in the right place. If you're watching this, you nailed it. Stay here.
Great job.
Hey, if you're enjoying our E3 coverage, you can support us by checking out Ting, a cell phone service provider where you only pay for what you use. 98% of people, that's a 9 followed by an 8, would save money by switching to Ting, sometimes hundreds of dollars a year. Here's what makes Ting different from your current plan. With Ting, you only ever pay for what you use, and so if you're like me and never use the actual phone part of your phone bill that month would be $0. Ting is also completely contract-free, which means no early termination fees, and Ting will even help you pay your network's early termination fees so you can make the switch over. They've even got a savings calculator to help you figure out exactly how much you'd save in just a couple of seconds. Support us by going to rev3games.ting.com and you'll get $25 in credit off your first bill or device.